Hello everybody and welcome back to Wappelville. It's going to be the first live session of the new year. We're just getting this stuff set up here. We're going to get rid of that so you can see this guy. This is Black Panther. It's from Marvel Crisis Protocol. We've done a couple of other figures here. This was the most recent. We had a lot of fun with the shield there. We did some sort of like he's lit by a street light on that. This was actually the first one here. Captain Marvel. We did the whole shiny outfit, and then we had some non-metallic metals on Ultron here. That was pretty fun. Now what we want to do is paint him black, but we're not going to use any black. And this is a live session not all that long ago, maybe not even a month ago. And we used some Reaper paints, some GW paints, mostly the contrast variety. And let's go grab me a brush here so I can point. And you can see there's all kinds of different nifty little colors here. You got greens and reds and purples. But from a distance, or at least even here, it looks black. And that's what we want to do on this guy here. And I'm thinking we're going to do this more in a bluish gray light. And that's why we have a few of these things out here. So we've got a couple of contrasts here. Hey Waleed, how's it going? Well, painting without paints it's probably it's more difficult than painting without pants. That's for sure, especially if it's summertime. And we're gonna back that up with some brown and blue liner. I don't know, maybe I messed up my title. It's a weird, stupid window, so I might have to go back and correct that. But hey, we'll just say, poof, he's painted. No paints, no paints necessary. Ah, we've got out on the palette here brown liner, blue liner, red liner. We've got a sepia liner, actually even a gray liner, and we got these two things right here. Now the last episode I just did, put that up on the Patreon page. I got done painting his iron. Oh, I'm gonna have this. Well, it's Hobbit. I guess we can still do. We can still have Easterlings crushing Hobbit stuff. Sure, we can. So we got Maggot White and Maiden Flesh. Those are going to lighten up not only the liner paints, but some of these contrast paints. So yeah, now here's another. This is actually one of my army painting series right here. Some Morgul Knights. Hey, Aerox Minis. How's it going? So hopefully these guys might be crushing some dwarves too. This was done in oils though. But again, the same idea. So you have a little bit of hint of green over here, same over here, but some areas a little more blue. So we're going to try that on this guy. Now I do have, since I'm going to use some of the clear liner paints, I do have a makeup sponge handy here. Oh, oh hey there, Rupi. How's it going? At least I hope I pronounced that correctly. Those color test figures, they're really they're fun, actually. But boy, sometimes when you're working on those, you're trying to squeeze every little neat thing you had thought of idea-wise into those. So they can be a double-edged sword. They can be really fun, and then they can be, man, I wanted to get this in there, I want to get that in there, and or you realize, oh, yeah, I can get that all in there, but man, it's going to take a long time to paint all these guys. So you can see we're mixing. This is a combination of the clear and those. Was it the Leviathan blue? Let's throw a little more of the brown in here. And what I'll do is I'll try and move this in a little bit closer once we get this stage pretty well set. And you can see we're just using gravity in our favor here, letting this work its way down. I'm gonna use some more of the blue liner. The blue liner is a little more Prussian blue, the Leviathan blue, a little bit on the, oh, I don't want to say purple side, but it has a little bit of purple in it. And see what we're doing. We're gonna take away some of that, little bit of it here and there, bring back some of the shading, and all that was very simple, just Badger Steiner Res Primer. Oh, the beautiful day in Taiwan. 20. Actually, that is, well, that's still, well, for me, that's still kind of on the toasty side there. It's got to be in the low 80s, maybe. Maybe mid 80s, something like that. Yeah, I still have to make a cheat sheet out of all of my lessons from that previous New Year's episode, because that was a whole lot of fun. I think we got a little bit of the wildwood into that. We're just gonna hit up this concrete here. I just assume that's concrete. Now that was just one of the, oh gosh, the goat riders. That wasn't one of the chariots, was it? Actually, oh, is it? Oh, that was the Blood Bowl Wood Elf star player that Forge World just threw up today. Well, not necessarily threw up, but put on their site. Now, even while this is wet, I can still play with it here. I'm gonna actually use my scissors. We're gonna cut down some of this. In Chicago, that's kind of warm. I think it's in the gotta be in the mid 30s out there, and by mid 30s I mean not Celsius, mid 30s. So probably 2-3 degrees Celsius, maybe something along those lines. Wish it was colder. Actually, I wish it was more like in the 20s here, and that's where my Celsius conversion in my head starts to break down. Hey Ken, how's it going? Because I'm pretty adept at, once you get into those 30s, temps are nasty. Anything in the 40s, like, well, most of Australia, that's kind of just approaching near death, unfortunately. I've been messing around more with the optolungs here. We're trying to give these a little bit of a torture test. Out, Nessie in the house. Hey, Trevor. Oh boy, well, Nessie's in the house, so I think I would be remiss if this didn't make an appearance. Yes, it is faded ultramarine, the most powerful color in the universe. It's more powerful than any of these superheroes, that's for sure. Hey, Chris, how's it going? All right, what I'm gonna do? Let's start establishing some stuff here on our concrete. Actually, Nessie, did you get to do your live stream earlier tonight? I know you had the under the weather thing going on for yesterday, so hopefully you actually still got to do yours. And wait a minute, what you weren't gonna be doing Black Panther, were you? No, no, that had to be somebody. I'm getting it so confused because Kathy's working on Killmonger, and I don't know, it was Dallas or somebody else posted pictures of a Koya today. Oh, I picked up a Chaos Noise Marine today. The only I know Rich and Waleed, he's probably played against Rich's Noise Marines. That was one of the very first 40K games I ever played back in, wow, '07 maybe? Something like that, good 13 years ago. Yeah, that was a while ago. Now you see I've got my cooler white over here. That's the maggot white. Got the warmer white maiden flesh. They're off whites. So see here if I mix the maiden flesh with a little bit of that Levite and blue, it almost gets a bit of a purplish look to it. And you can see how the concrete has sort of a warm look. Oh, it's Manu. Oh, it's Browntown Games. Actually, boy, I just saw you on Instagram. I don't know if I think you had just liked somebody's. Oh, it was actually really neat. I don't know, it was a piece of terrain or whatever. It was a really impressive paint job there, and I saw Browntown Games on the like list. So great to have you in here. Finally, yes. At a certain point, things just have to intersect. And so we're just finding a few areas that are lighter. Now it's got almost a little bit more of a reddishness to it. But before that goes too far, I want to go back to that's that sepia liner, giving me a little bit of yellow. Now, what I'm hoping to do also here, sort of squeeze in a secondary, I don't know if you want to call it lesson, but a demo here for folks that say, well, yeah, that's great, Reaper paints, it's way too freaking expensive. to get them where we live because of shipping and all that other type of stuff. Well, let's see, somewhere along here we got snakebite leather, we got wildwood. So wildwood is kind of my brown liner, basically. And we're going to throw some of that out here too. And basically I'm messing around with the concrete and such here while I wait for him to dry. But you can see there's stuff mixing wet into wet. That is the one interesting thing that happens when you're using the contrast paints. They basically act sort of like a medium that has some color in it, like a medium that's got some color, and it's a little more gentle on your paints if you want to make them translucent than say just water, which is what I'm normally using. It gives them a nice little, you can almost glaze with them, but I just call it a dry glaze basically. It's not so watery. Now see what I'm doing here? See, I'm setting this brush on its side and just sort of carrying it along like this. All of a sudden now that point becomes like a 3/4 inch, 5/8 inch wide brush. Same brush, just holding it at a different angle, and you can see we're chill on the way we're holding the brush. We don't have a death grip on it or anything like that. All right, let's start to play around here. So we got Leviathan blue, we got maggot white. See how that's almost a little bit more on the purple side. Now we're gonna take that blue liner and do this, and you can see a little difference there. It's easier on the actual camera over here than on the palette can because you got it's so wet that I just mixed it. You got a little bit of kickback. But look at what we get here. See, we got a nice little rich color. Now looking at him, here, let's make his reference bigger. See all those dots and texture on him? We're gonna have to somehow find a way to translate that texture from there to here. I'm gonna make some of my windows bigger here so I can see some of this stuff. And let's see if I can get him a little closer to the camera for you. But the nice thing is, again, we can work transparently here, but without having to have a lot of water in the paint. And my goal here is to get on this back side here, the legs, top of the legs, the calf here, have that be a little more on the bluish side, and everything that's facing towards the ground, that's going to be tinged a little bit warmer. And I know for some folks, they're used to well, we're going to prime this dark, and then we're going to layer up, layer up, layer up. We don't quite do that here. We don't quite do that here. See, we're even letting some of the original wash or glaze, however you want to put it. I know some people see those as washes as opposed to glazes. Actually, what's going to be pretty wild is that Blackheart models, they make busts of, I know for sure, Black Panther and I guess his sister. I don't know if they make some of the other ones, but I know there's definitely a Black Panther bust. So after doing this, well, that means I'm going to have to do me one of those Blackheart models busts. Now, I'm going to switch over here to that color that's got actually a little more of a purple to it. And now I'm just going to start to, it's going to be less about blending stuff here, especially because, well, it seems to me like there's a whole ton of texture. I'm just trying to make some notations here. We're just going to keep it real simple. We also have this necklace here, and that's pretty darn shiny. That's part of where the Achillean green is going to go, and we'll just be a few more minutes here till we get to that. I am going to crank up my brightness back up to a more normal level there. I always have to sort of turn it down when I get things started, because for whatever reason, it wants to burn things out with that lighter primer color. Let's see. Oh, Bethany's here. Yeah, it's been a little bit strange. There were actually a bunch of things we were supposed to do that didn't quite happen, which it was just a little strange. It was actually a whole lot warmer here than last year. It was more normal temperatures, whereas I kind of think around this time last year, or maybe it was the year before, we were somewhere around minus 30 Fahrenheit, somewhere in that range, I think. It was a wee bit on the frosty side. Yeah, let's start to work in just a touch of this. So a little bit of the Achillean green, and we are going to do a similar thing. We're going to mix that with our lighter colors. Oh, let's throw this in here. And we're going to maybe even get a little bit of this, few dots of this also just on his suit as well. Now, how far? Okay, that's how far that goes. I'm going to, if you don't mind, I'm going to be looking at this reference. Yeah, that was a frosty. Actually, we went somewhere just to the usual friend's house that we go to on New Year's Eve, and we had to have blankets in the vehicle and such because Kathy, that was the one day she was trying to do the dress up thing, and it wasn't exactly meant for cold weather gear, and we had to put blankets over so she didn't freeze to death on the way there. That was a chilly one. I have a feeling that was last year though. Now these I can always tone back down again. And with his mask, I'm thinking that I will have to do some kind of reflective things here in a few areas. So I'm just gonna see how I'm just trying to mark down a few little things here, thinking, okay, maybe that's a hint of glint. Let's go a little more intense with our. Yeah, I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I'm gonna have my reference picture up there so I can get a little bit of a peek at that. Yeah, there's just suit everywhere. There's no skin to worry about. Now I can give him. Not quite sure if he has actual just glow to his eyes or not. I'm just gonna assume that. Well, let's see. It looks a little more the reference on the lower right. Actually, I see a little bit of there's some tan in some of those lines. All right. Well, let's not forget. Oh, you're out there in April. Oh yeah. Let's see. I don't think it's ever gotten that cold here in maybe 10 or so. Yeah, actually, we've had two polar vortexes come through. There was the one year. I know it was with the wind chills. It was minus 52, somewhere in that range around here. It was definitely minus 30 or less for 3-4 days. There was the year that we set a record for, gosh, was it 9 or 10 days below zero? And that's Fahrenheit below zero. That's the real deal right there. And I guess it's weird. We're sort of getting more of those polar vortexes, but then also getting some more of these warm type days. So here we're messing around with our faded blue, ultramarine. Something you gotta recognize though about the creature caster paints is that they cover like crazy. So you're not going to have that transparency. You just have to remember that's the case. So now that we've kind of worked our way through that, let's go a little smaller with our brushes, because remember we want to do We want to do some of that texture stuff that we see right in here. Yeah, I've seen snow on the ground in May here. That's very rare, but oh, definitely in April. Yeah, sometimes actually some of our biggest snowstorms happen in April. Ironically, because it's actually warmer and you get the bigger, heavier snowflakes instead of the snow when it's in the low 20s or whatever, and those tend to be the smaller, harder, almost more like snow pellets. Those don't necessarily feel super great in the face. Now we're going to take a little bit of brown liner here. We're going to work around these eyes real quick. Over here. So yeah, Kathy, she's going to start back up again on her Killmonger Tuesday next week, I would believe. And for me, I know tomorrow I'm going to be, it's sort of a special collaboration project. Now, I know that my patrons, it's for them too, but it might be, I think it's a general public thing meant for sharing. The idea is you take something that you painted years ago when you had no clue what the heck you were doing, and then you try and work on it again now with what you know and everything that you've learned since. And it's basically supposed to be an encouragement too for folks saying, hey, look, we weren't born knowing all these different techniques and everything. We had to learn too, just like you did or are. So some of these things I may change them. I reserve the right to change them. Oh, another thing too, as always, what's not on the palette, there's no white. Eventually, there will be some, but that is an eventuality. That is not now. We're still just going with some of that maggot white there. These aren't supposed to be final highlights. All these are is me just figuring out what the heck is going on. What are some of these things? Because I can still glaze over this stuff. A lot of adjustments that can be made to this. And remember, we want to get that texture in there as well. I'm not quite sure these are supposed to be necessarily that bright. Again, something we'll figure out when we get to it. The whole point of this, and I was just talking to somebody about this earlier. Yes, it's a strange way to work, but it is a whole lot faster. You can get things really cranked up fast, especially when you have multiple figures to worry about. And that's kind of just about all of us. I mean, really, who can just sit there and luxuriously just paint one figure and go, my army's done? Heck, even this game has more. Oh, I'm going to catch up on the chat here. Oh, yes, Nessie, there's ultramarine blue. Aerox Minis, yeah, the winters here, a huge change from Michigan winter, that's for sure. Wow, it's hitting 50. Because I was here in 46 in Perth and such, and I went, geez. To me, 40 is pretty much near death. So 50 is, yeah, I think you could just take eggs, put them out on the sidewalk, and have those cook for you. Well, either that or just wait for those eucalyptus trees, because when they get warm, the oil, and eucalyptus oil is real flammable anyways. And now you got these trees that are basically, they're dry as tinder. It's super hot. Then the fires get so intense they create their own weather, as in more lightning, which then hits the tinderbox, complete with some basically natural kerosene added to it. That is quite the barbecue going on. I've been trying to look at maps to see which areas are the most affected, or because doesn't really seem to be any control over it. Ropes, I just got the creature caster transparent. Not sure I'm going to incorporate them. I almost think, but don't. Now I've got some. I'm pretty sure I've got live episodes like this. Just take a gander through those, and you'll probably run across some live episodes like this where we basically tested out those transparent paints, see what they would do. To me, they're more like the clear and liner paints than they are, say, maybe the contrast paints. I've used them a bunch of times. I think the last thing I used them with was probably one of my Patreon tutorials. I'm going to get this touch light. Oh, what the heck. I'm going to play with a little more of the faded ultramarine here. Now I'm just looking at my reference. I gotta get some shiny there. And we're gonna have to try and get some spots too. So we're gonna make him smaller and stick him over there. I've got some lines here. It's the one thing about the MCP figs right here, is that sometimes the detail is a little bit on the shallow side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in here. It's really more of me reminding myself, hey, this is here. Oh, Gary, we have a Gary in the house, and we have Al Capone. Yeah, we've got the faded ultramarine going. Well, actually, thank Nessie because he reminded me. I kind of forgot about the faded ultramarine, and geez, what's a better little thing to mess around with that than, say, Black Panther here, where you're trying to get some of that bluish gray purple look going on. Okay, I'm gonna just looking around for these different areas here where the suit's getting split up like so. But always keep in mind that faded ultramarine blue, we love it, but it's it's pretty intense, and it just doesn't. It's a little bit difficult to do the same kind of semi-translucent stuff like we're doing here. Now I'm about to have an early hot pot dinner. I should be here because we're pretty much just getting started. That's all this is. We are just getting going here. So see you later. And let's see. Yeah, well, I think, the last video that I did, which I don't know if you saw, the one on Dark Sword, that was focused basically all on the GW paints there. It's focused pretty much entirely on that. And again, it was done for the folks that just have a hard time getting their hands on these. Well, on the Reaper paints, that is. Now we're going to go back the other way here. We're going to take some of that blue liner, thin that down, and see how we can just kind of work back and forth here. I even want that to tone down those eyes a little bit. We're gonna work back and forth. I think some folks, they're also surprised when they see that after I do the lighter stuff, kind of work from the middle, work my way out more towards the light, and then they see me go back towards the darker colors again. All of the creature caster paints, they are designed to cover, and I mean cover like crazy. So even the yellow, and it's interesting because it's not necessarily that they added a bunch of white to it. That's this, I guess, is a subtext to something else I like to talk about, and it's so why are you getting company comes out with a new line of paints or whatever? What's the point of it? is it really different, or is it just the same as everything else that's out there? And then it leads to the next question is, so why are you buying it? Do you really need it? Or is it more just, well, this other person who goes to my game store has it, and man, I really don't want to be left out. I don't want to be left behind. So that's, I guess, consider why maybe you're looking to get a paint. For me, the Reaper clear and liners, they are the most efficient paints for me. I can do stuff so much faster with those. Most other paints, they just slow me down. I have to do extra things that I don't have to do with the clear and liners. And for me, well, kind of for all of us, time matters a whole bunch. Now you see, I'm starting to think of, see, we're starting to do a little bit of dot matrix here. A little bit of tap, 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 a little bit of stipple. I definitely wanted to establish colors first before even thinking about doing any sort of stipple stuff. What I might do is turn down the brightness here again real quick. We'll just keep working on, keep doing this. A little bit of stipple in here. And just remember, what are we, 20 minutes into this thing? Pretty much. Somewhere in that Oh, hey Josh, how's it going? Yeah, sorry I missed the hangout there earlier that you guys did. Here, I'm gonna make that a little smaller, push that off to the side. I know that Jitsi thing or whatever, that just doesn't play at all with my setup here, my camera setup, so yeah, I'm not quite sure how many more of those I can, well, maybe eventually something, they use something else besides that Jitsi thing, or they just do regular hangouts. Tonight I actually had to paint something that was two-dimensional, and I couldn't paint it over here underneath the camera because the surface was a wee bit too big. I was still using miniature paints though. Still using those miniature paints. Ironically, it was these same Reaper clear and liner paints. Because, yeah, you can use those for regular 2D painting also. Let's see, Alcone is, it's difficult to know what paints are bringing something new to the table or if they're all really relatively the same. The Pro Acryl stuff, basically, there's a few colors that are sort of on the unique side. Well, like this faded ultramarine. The other thing is that I know they have that really intense coverage. So what I'll sometimes do is take something that is more translucent, like, well, either the transparent or the Games Workshop contrast paints, and I'll mix them with, and we got some lines right here we need to do. I'll mix those with the Pro Acryls to make the Pro Acryls a little less opaque. They'll still cover. They're also, what was it, super matte. They're very flat. Whereas, say, the contrast paints, and to me, GW paints in general, have a little bit of shiny on them. Yeah, it's what Fridays just are kind of definitely a weird day lately. At least for me. Now that, and then there's just holiday season in general, which causes chaos in all schedules. So here, working on the opposite side of some of these pieces of metal here. I'm even, what the heck? That's blue liner, that's brown liner. I'm also going to reinforce some of these lines. Like I said, detail's pretty shallow here. which means I've got to give it a boost via the paint. It was something that I noticed the very first time when I painted that first Captain Marvel there. And I said, oh, okay, that's going to be a thing. What the heck? That's some of the warp. I think it's warp lightning green. I'm going to mess with some of that here. Yes, I am. Crazy as that sounds. Yeah. I'll take some green in here because we don't want this all just being the same here. I'll catch you later, Josh. Oh, let's see. An alcohol. I have the Chimera paints. Very matte. Yeah. I was able to work with the Chimera colors very briefly over the summer at Gen Con. And ironically, they were sent to me while we were away at ReaperCon, and I had to hold mail. And apparently, they showed up here. We were still in Texas for another 3 days, and yet they showed up here. So much for the hold mail. And unbeknownst to us, they were sent back, I believe, to Spain. So I don't know if those are finally on their way back here. That was sort of the plan, was to finally get those back over here. Because there's no way to know what something can do until you actually get it out there and play with it. So yes, this is actually green here. Let's see, when I was messing around with those at Gen Con, the other thing they did was they stayed they stayed wet for longer. So I could almost do a it was kind of a watercolor slash oil type thing. I could actually do some really fun wet into wet things. Whereas some of the other stuff say that the creature casters, they can stay wet a little bit longer too. Oh, this is another thing about the creature caster paints is they're really not intended for wet palettes. And it seemed to me that the Chimera colors, they didn't mind being on a wet palette. They seem to be okay with that. So yeah, we're just sneaking in some green here. It's not going to register as green in the least, but you can see we're working with some green there. Let's get some of that even here on his face. When you've got something like this, that's, boy, and I hate limited palette. I really don't even say that. I just like to say compressed color range or muted palette, some other word or euphemism besides limited palette, because you don't have to limit your palette. You can put all kinds of wild and crazy colors on here. Now, I don't even know if you can see what I'm doing right here. Let's see, we're getting some of that green in there. Almost, what about that sort of comic book look where they're lit a certain way? You know, who knows? Maybe he's standing by a street light that's green. I don't know. But I will splash some of that also onto the base, because as Nessie and all the other vets know, in here, when a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. So here's this faded ultramarine. The interesting thing also, I mean, this is a dark color. This is not by any stretch of the imagination a light color. But here it looks like it's almost white. What that says is that we were really successful in setting up those darks. It says that we've got some nice strong darks in there for something that's this dark, basically a middle tone right here. I mean, look at this thing. I just put it next to right next to that ultimate, or the maiden flesh, which is a really light color, and it just looks dark. That's the interesting thing about these different colors and stuff. I'll reflect it. Yep. Let's see. Yeah, they do find out they don't tend to run too much either. That's the thing. Yeah, that separation thing that can happen there. Geez, the only Vallejo paints that I can really remember using in the last well, several years are the not the transparents, the fluorescents. Actually, I just used those on this here. So this is the from Hellboy here. I think this was the second to last live session here. That's Liz Sherman, right? But you can see here that now this would break down a little bit. If it sat on the palette for a while, it would want to start breaking down a little bit. So we're doing our stippling thing. We're going to go stippling a couple of ways. We'll do it obviously using brighter colors, but then we will also try to do a little bit of stippling with some darker stuff. Yeah, I like the idea of this green down here. I'm going to even warm that up just a touch. I just threw a little bit of the sepia liner with it. Oh, hey, Will. How's it going? Yeah, and I hardly ever get to use it, but the fluorescent magenta, man, I really love that. If you check out some of well, you can do it on my Instagram there. Sitting right there, the Wappelius and Instagram. If you ever want to see pictures of what these things look like when they're done, that's all up there. It's all, and I just put, where'd you go? I just put the pictures of this guy up there. So this is my latest tutorial that I just put on the Patreon page. So this is a dark sword figure here. We did the basing, we did all kinds of fun stuff, but this was the exercise in painting this all in Games Workshop colors so that we could, just like this, where you're saying, okay, we're using blue liner here, brown liner there, mixing it with the maiden flesh. Well, we did the exact same stuff, only this time we did it with the GW paint. And I'm doing the same thing here. See how that we're using a touch of that green there, only now it's even a little bit warmer. But remember, all of this refinement type stuff, this happens as you need it to be. Let's say you need to play a game or whatever, or show somebody how to play the game. You can take them off of this. It's just an old dead paint container. You take them off of this, play the game, put them back on, you start painting again. So I'm going to go even more sepia liner in places here. Let's go back to some of our maiden flash, mixing it with the let's see, Will says cracking on with more lizard men. The cold worm eyes do not fit together. Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, boy, those, even just mentioning those cold riders gives me what the kind of a horrible flashback of the old days of when they had to do those leadership tests at the start of every turn. You did the 3d6, take the two lowest, right? Oh, that's great. Lizardman leadership 9. You rolled 3 dice, pick the two lowest. They failed not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. Oh, stupidity tests or whatever. Yeah, they went stupid 4 turns in a row. They ended up in a forest somewhere. And at the time, that was I don't know if they're still as expensive points wise as they were way back in the day when they were on those rectangles, but man, that was brutal. And they never were used again. That was the last time I ever used those guys. It's a little bit. I'm getting really anxious to use the Optilung oils here. I was just actually taking some pictures of these, so we've got some new oil paints we're going to be trying out. These guys right here. And there's also some new things like this. Like, hey, dust effects could be really nifty on this base right here. And I'm itching to get back into some of my bolt action stuff too. I was just painting some British Airborne. I was just doing a Jeep I think Roy's using it as a transport. So I'm even going to mix a little bit of our faded ultramarine in here too. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of things that I'm going to try those Optilung on. Some units, some large figures, large scale stuff, busts. That's all going to pretty much start next week. It's going to really take shape probably the week after that, because with oils, that's the one ironic thing is you can paint a whole lot faster with them, but if you want to take pictures of them, you have to kind of wait. So like this guy, I could just take pictures of this right now because he'd be dry. But with those oil paints, now the other thing we want to test with those Optilungs is will they dry as fast and as matte as the oil brushers? And people know how much I love my oil brushers. Those are fantastic. But I've been asked about the Optilungs so many times, just like the Chimera colors. And who knows? Maybe they're just the same thing. Maybe I don't like them as much. Maybe I like them better. Maybe there's some little different thing that they do, like we were talking about. Does the paint actually do something that's different as opposed to just, well, okay, we're doing the same thing with this paint. Speaking of this paint, I'm going to grab me some of that Flesh Tear red. We're going to mix it with Leviathan blue. Yeah, crazy as this sounds, we're gonna get us some purple in here. Yeah, we're doing that. We are doing that right now. Oh, how does the painting process vary on something like a bust? You have to push further with every. Actually, I have several busts. Well, geez, there's the Verizian bust, right? And then there's the Drogon bust. I just did the Drogon bust maybe 2 weeks ago, something like that. I've also got actually the what's her name, Morticia bust. I did that one in oils. Actually, the bust really has just the exact same process on there. It's just the whole thing is bigger, so the brushes get even bigger, and the strokes get more broad, and I can do a little bit more in the way of, I want to say, some wet blending, because that paint I'm working with an even bigger brush, working really fast. Now here we're gonna start to do a little spot glazes right here. I'm gonna get a little more. There we go. I just had to tone that glaze down just a touch. And here we've got some muscle type things going right in there. Well, the suit is anyway. Still working with some of those greens in there. Now, I'm going to take some of the maiden flesh. We'll use that to start to lighten some of the faded ultramarine. And this is a good place to, on the shoulders, places they're going to catch some light. That is probably your best bet for catching some of that stipple texture there. Right here. Now, I guess some might say, well, the suit's being stretched or whatever. Is it really, do you want to be doing that right there? Well, it doesn't seem to be super stretchy. Oh, Fruity Toots, how you doing? Glad you're able to catch this one here. I know you had to bug out early on the holiday stream there. There's a few things. I've got some Warcry figs And what I want to do is I've got half the warband painted in acrylics, and all I got to do is just get the other half on their bases with the object of doing the other half of the warband with the oils, because I already did one test figure with the oils. So this way people can see that, yeah, there's not supposed to be a visual difference. I'm not using the oils to make them look different. The oils are being used essentially out of efficiency. Now, let's say here we're doing the Marvel Crisis Protocol stuff and we want to use the oils. I would have several figures out. I might have some of the terrain stuff. And I would be working on all of it at the same time. And the nice thing about the oils is I could just keep hammering away with those. And instead of that panicked, oh my gosh, I got to keep going here. My paint's going to dry. My paint's going to dry. And I don't mean you paint the palette. I mean the paint on your miniature. There's also a whole lot less mixing that goes on in your palette when you work with the oils. And I mean a whole lot less. See, we're starting to do all these little dots here. Oh, what the heck. I've got some of this Achillean green. We'll mix. We'll have fun here. We're going to mix some ultramarine, faded ultramarine blue with the Achillean green. And we're going to get some different color spots in here. So we've got some green. We've got all kinds of crazy different colors here of spots, which the eye is just going to sort of blend together. But when it takes a little closer look at this, it's going to say, wait a minute, there's more going on there. There is definitely more than just gray. Heck, there's more than bluish gray. Look, there's green. There's almost tan. There's purple. Now, there was a part of me that was tempted to actually sort of take like a street light or something and maybe break that and have it sort of at his feet here, but still maybe with the wires intact somehow, so that, I don't know, it would be shining on him like the green light or whatever. Here on the base, look what I'm doing. I just threw some of the blue right over there. I'm going to do some of that over here. Maybe it sort of makes it look like moonlight or something. Here, let's put some more of this. Right, almost like like I said, there's some kind of almost like moonlight shining on him. Let's get some of this on his back here. Let's see, where are we at here? We are at like 50 minutes into this. If you're doing any metallics, don't forget. I haven't got pink. It ain't metallic. Oh yeah, that's, you gotta have the pink balanced with the purples and the greens. Heck, on that lizard that you saw there, even in the golds, there's green, there's purple, there's red and green, basically right next to each other. They sit right next to each other on that lizard dude. I think they call them draconids. I think that's it. There's gonna be some fun dark sword stuff coming along too. There's a whole new big 28 new figures or whatever, new sculpts that are coming up for Dark Sword, and those are going to be working their way over here so that I can do some more fun Dark Sword stuff for you guys. Well, in addition to the usual nifty Dark Sword figures. So Marvel Crisis Protocol wise, what else is in the queue? There's a Doc Ock. I believe you got Black Panther's sister, I think, is also one of the figures that's prepped and ready to go. There's the guy with the cube, and that's where Nessie can Help me out. Which guy, who that is, the guy with the cube. Still, we've barely even dented our maggot white, much less actual white. But I'm going to try and find a few dramatic lights here because I'm seeing that on the helmet. It's almost like the helmet is made out of metal. It makes sense. I didn't know it was a helmet. I thought it was more of just kind of a mask, but it seems to be more helmet than mask. I'm gonna brighten up just a section of the eyes here. So I'm gonna use the maiden flesh here. See if I can't drop a little bit right there and there. I can't quite tell. Yeah, see, there's some other things that have some glinting of something on him, on his arms there. So a little more of the Achillean green here on these metal bits, just to distinguish them from the suit. All right, we're going to go maiden flesh into our faded ultramarine here. We're going to get some more of the, oh, Rasputin. Yeah, he is in there. A Red Skull, that's it. Red Skull. I've got a Rasputin. He's all set, but there's, I got to find my Green Stuff World books. Where the heck did he go? He is over here somewhere. Where are you at? Ah, here he is. Yeah, I want to put some books down here and then do some glowing effects with those. So that'll be the next Hellboy figure that we do. Let's see, I've got Sisters of Battle prepped. I'm just going to base a couple of those. And I'm going to play around with some of those on the live stream just to test out a few different color schemes, see if I actually like them or not. So again, I am going to get down into here with some of this green here. Let's get some maiden flesh. There's that same green again. We're going to find ourselves some spots in here. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing there. And we're going to do the blue fluorescent paint, the same blue fluorescent that we used for Liz Sherman there. Now for folks that are new to the channel here, you haven't really been in here before and seen the madness, I try and do these, what would you say, at least once a week, but usually twice a week. Pretty much about once every 3 days or so, I try and do one of these. And it varies. Sometimes there's a very specific figure in mind, and then there's other times where there's a figure that it's a color test or something like that I just want to see. Something like, well, say my Lord of the Rings armies, or I need it for, we're going to be playing a game or whatever. Like my Easterling Standard Bearer when I did that. That was one of those where I just said, you know what? I want him painted for a game. I'm going to paint him in one of the live streams. The Urkin brand that I painted and the last one. Man, he was a lot of fun. He was a blast. That's another figure that I need for my games of Lord of the Rings. Now here, I got to get the same somewhat darker tones on the other sides of those metals. I like this blue over here. I'm going to expand this. I don't want to go too far with it. Don't want to go too far with it. So the series that's winding down, I got one episode left. That's in my Lizard Man Blood Bowl series. That's for the Patreon page. See, that's the address of it scrolling right across the bottom of the screen there. When you sign up for the Patreon page, you do that Army Painter pledge level, you're getting somewhere in the area of 260 some odd hours of videos that cover everything: basing, large creatures, small things, Blood Bowl teams, Lord of the Rings. We're even going to be doing Aeronautica stuff. We're going to be doing the 40k stuff now. I got the Cypher Lords for Warcry. I've got the Ossiarchs that I'm going to start up a series for. Really looking forward to the Ossiarchs. Some of those will be done in oils also. Now I'm taking that Maiden Flash here and I'm just trying to get a couple of dots. That's that whole little thing I like to do for those metals to give them that bit of sparkle. Instead of a continuous line of highlights, just give them that little bit of sparkle. Interrupt it. Now it's not quite as stippled, say, as what we're doing here. So we've been doing lots of light color stippling here. Let's try some darker stippling, and by darker I mean actually making almost a purple here and seeing what happens with that. Yeah, poor Nessie and Fruity Toots, and everybody else that's joined, they just, when they first sign up, and all of a sudden there's that blizzard of tutorials, that avalanche that comes at you. Because what am I on now? I'm on almost done with Series 15. Series 16 is about half over. I've prepped the figures for Series 17, 18, 19, and 20, and that's no joke. I just filmed Dark Sword, the 29th episode of Painting Dark Sword. Technically, there's a 30th one out there because it was actually a live session. I believe last month alone, and this is during December with, a couple of minor holidays involved. And somehow, holy smokes, I believe I did 16 videos that were 2.5 hours long on average. Yeah, that surprised me too when I found that out. Ah, no regrets, baby. Yeah, I don't want to make it like it's eyeliner or something, but Panther does sort of, all the cats and wolves, they have those dark outlines around their eyes, so that's a safe thing to be doing. Oh, let's play in here. We've kind of, I'm gonna get some of that sepia liner in here. Do something in here with some of these muscle type areas there. So again, the whole idea here is to get as many different colors as possible. Now we got to do some reflected stuff here. I'm going to take the red liner now. It's going to turn that green into a bit of a brown. Yeah, I know this is not the most exciting part of the miniature, but gots to be done. All the while keeping up with the stippling effects there. If it ever gets to be too much, no problem. You just dial yourself up a glaze and knock that right down. I am not quite sure if these are just sort of part of the suit to make it look neat, or if they actually do some kind of function here, these things around his ankles. And these are the things that I guess I'll just have to kind of research, sort of like my military history stuff, because never actually read comic books or anything like that. So the whole superhero deal, that is nouveau territory for me. Now, at a certain point too, I'll probably take my anti-shine, my army painter anti-shine. I'll go in there and I'll drop some anti-shine on this, and it does a nifty thing, especially when you've got darker colors like this. It sort of restores a little bit of luster back to them. Now let's get some separation between those fingers. We've got, I see in here we also have to work this leg here. I see we have to continue these, whatever those are, those seams. Definitely here. Well, it's going to be tough for you to see because his hand is right in the way. It's tough for me to see. Also going to use this to tone down some of that and darken it down. Like I said, you'll see me work back and forth sometimes, especially at this part, at this phase, when we've worked our way through it, and we've got a pretty solid idea what it is that, okay, where are our lightest lights, where's our darkest darks, that sort of thing. Speaking of darkest darks, we are going to go back into glaze mode here. There are some darks that I just need to power in here like this. Because I added some of the lighter midtones. Now we're going to add sort of a separation where the reflected light is and where your more of your highlight ambient light is. But again, the nifty thing about those clear and liner paints is that as you're doing this, the paint is just naturally a little more translucent. Alright, I'm going to go back to the maggot white here. Hit a few of these, whatever these are, on his wrists and arms. Then back to a little bit of the Achillean green. Now I'm fairly certain that most folks have not used the contrast paints on wet palettes. I've got a whole bunch of different videos with the contrast paints. I'm doing skyers, non-metallic metals with them. Like I said, I'm trying to change people's mentality on all of that stuff. Those are so darn expensive. Believe me, I wouldn't really use them at all. The primary reason I'm using those is because people have such a hard time getting the Reaper paints where they live in very toasty places like Australia right now. Or even in Europe, it's not the easiest thing in the world. So see how we just snuck a little bit of turquoise in there? Searching for some more reflected light right here. I think you'll see what I'm after as I do these couple of areas here. Like so. Now, I think Kathy and we were having a little discussion about, okay, so the imagery on the the miniatures for MCP. That's Marvel Crisis Protocol. The is it more movie based? Is it more comic book based? It seems to me to be more movie based. And again, that's I would rely on folks like Nessie and all that sort of stuff to say, oh yeah, that's it's more this, it's more that, because they are the font of those knowledge, that knowledge right there. At least compared to me, that's for sure. Because I really don't know. Me, I'm just slapping paint on things. That's what I do. Right here. Now some of the stippling that I'm doing is to actually tone down some of the previous stippling. Here, let's... There we go. Needed to tie a few things together there. This going to get knocked down just a bit. And still, we do not have any white out on the palette whatsoever. More comic book based, I think, with the style. It's just as I looked at these reference pictures of him, it definitely seemed to really go almost movie style, but then Captain Marvel was sort of more comic book, I think. When I looked at the references there, I'm pretty sure most of what I did was based more on, say, comic book rendering than something like, say, a movie, or at least the way I would think of it. The costumes in the movies tend to have, oh, what would you say? I don't want to say they look, well, they're kind of more of a gritty look than, say, the comic books. Let's see what we've done here, trying to, gonna do the same on his back. But you have to be careful that it's focused more where the light would catch those things. It's tempting, and boy, did we do this a whole bunch. Speaking of things that you used to do when you didn't really know what to do, I would highlight basically practically the tops of their feet to the same degree that I would lighten up the tops of the shoulders or whatever. On cloaks, the bottom of the cloak would be almost highlighted just as light as the top, and that just didn't make any sense. It was kind of silly. But we didn't really know any better. We hadn't really painted miniatures before. It was all super new. Boy, was that new. And sometimes you learn by looking at other people's stuff. You know, it used to be, what would you say, cool mini or not. That's where we learned at first. Of course, now you got Instagram, which is, well, in some ways it's better because, well, there's way more people posting stuff there, and it's a wider audience and everything like that. It can maybe be a little bit tougher to find certain things. But the nice thing is there's no rankings on Instagram stuff. There's just stuff. So that's also the nice part about it. And you can look at those for ideas. I'm going to try to do some of the IGTV stuff. So if you're on, see that Instagram thing there, if you ever follow that, you may at some point see me trying to do little videos of some kind. Fortitudes, the cool mini days. Oh yeah, that was, I think it was 2002, early in 2002 we were introduced to cool mini. That doesn't seem. Sometimes that seems forever ago, and sometimes it does not seem forever ago. Yeah, I'm gonna go back to my Achillean green over here and just tone down the nose on this thing. Looking for, yeah, reflected light there. Here, let's connect some dots here a little bit. Now, do I want some more blue over here? I'll take some of the faded ultramarine, mix it with the faded ultramarine. And getting not quite sure where this is going here. You know, I could do water effects on here. Make it almost look like this has been wet. I could, a lot of fun different things I could try out. Could put some debris here, newspapers. Because I think I saw someone on there's actually, I didn't realize it, but there's a second Marvel Crisis Protocol Facebook group. And there you've got a bunch of really neat things with the toy cars and trucks that people have found, and they've weathered those things and made them look pretty darn realistic. Maybe it's easier to find those in Europe than it is here in the US, unfortunately. Didn't have a whole lot of success on Amazon. Well, the ones I was finding were between $40 and $80 or something, and the folks on the Facebook page were talking about spending $7-8. So I clearly was not finding the right things. Oh, Nicholas. Well, thank you very much. That's really appreciated because sometimes, especially when you're the one who kind of does the weird things that nobody else does, sometimes you wonder why do people, are they okay? You know, do they still believe in this here? All this craziness that we do? Or do they just get freaked out and run away? But nope, there are loyalists. I appreciate all the loyalists that stay with me no matter how crazy some of this stuff looks. Now, see, I've got, remember I was talking about the chain of highlights there? Let's do a couple of, see, this is how we can infer that there's that texture, but without doing it absolutely everywhere. It's just like with the freehand. So where is Erkenbrand? He's got to be around here somewhere. Ah, here he is. So let's grab him, and this was the last live session. So see how this is just kind of inferred some of that texture there and some of the freehand. It's not necessarily painted in 100%. When you got these dots here on something this tiny, I mean, he is small. He's really tiny. I don't want to say you have to hide that texture, but it can get, it's just like anything else. Weathering, say, chipping. It goes too far, too fast. And the next thing you know, you just, you might as well just start covering up. So let's do some. Now that's going to be, that's really wild. I'm just doing almost straight up Achillean green in some areas here. I'm going to see what happens if I lighten up some of this right in here. Just trying to get a few points of light caught there, here on his back. Same thing. There's just multiple levels of texture here. I'm Pretty sure. I think it was a Dark Sword. That's it. It was one of the painting Dark Sword episodes, and we focused on doing this sort of texture. That's right. I was trying to think. I know I've done something with texture on it. But yeah, it was one of the Dark Sword. It was a cloak, obviously, but the handiest places for texture type things. This is a much more difficult challenge. That's for sure. Much more difficult challenge. Here, let's get some more of this on the cheekbones there, and then for sure, I'm gonna see if I can't work in some more reflected light here, bottom of his head. A couple more spots here. Now let's go back the other way. Let's get some of our darker stuff here. That's a little bit of that purple mix that we just made not too long ago. Like so. Got some shadow areas here that I'm gonna let's get a few dark dots in here. We've been doing light, light, light. Let's do some darker stuff here. Oh, over here for sure. And it's sort of like the chain of highlights. Sometimes you do the opposite. You have a whole bunch of darks in it, and it makes sense that they would follow these contours. I see I'm missing some lighter colors here along that trim on the helmet. Now we've got brown there, a little bit of the gray liner. Gray liner it's an interesting color. It's really best to just kind of mix it with the data link. Since I'm here now, I can start. Well, we're sort of starting the last hour because it's, let's see, what was it, about 2-ish or so when we started. We got this heated up and got it going. That's actually some red liner now mixed with some of the, I keep forgetting the name of the purple contrast paint that I've been using. Oh, shyish purple. That's it. Shyish purple, very much like a red liner. Jeez, I was forgetting the name. It's been bugging me pretty much for a couple days now. Now I worked the lights in there. I'm going to kind of go the opposite way here again. Get some more definition in places. That's the fun thing that you can start to do at this point. Now let's grab Mr. Ring right there. And you can see again, there's lots of greens and blues, all other different types of colors. So Nicholas is, well, have a safe trip to work, and thanks for joining, Nicholas. It's much appreciated. And it's after 1 a.m. So that's a little bit of West Coast there. I know. What is it? Is it the Pacific time zone that is the 3 hours behind us? Because it's what, 3 something here. It's gonna be about 3:13 ish. I know. Well, I know it's that much later for Nessie out east there. Can't tire him out too much because then he won't be able to do his own stream, and he's doing his MCP figs, well, and Hellboy figs too. Now let's get some reflected light there, and that little piece of these metal guys here on a necklace. one more here, and the other one, just the way they're sort of sculpted in there, it makes it really tough to get at those. So let's make his reference picture bigger here. Okay, so I think I want to make those the metal things that much more reflective. So Pacific time zone. We'll shrink that down, and we will go back into our Kilian green here. Now there's still the ace in the hole that I haven't accessed yet for a reason, and that's straight up white. Oh, let's use something like this here. Now I could use the titanium. Oh, all right. Yeah, let's grab. Where are you? Here it is, pure titanium white. This is the creature caster, bold titanium white. So you're looking for white that's going to cover like crazy. Oh, Data Link needs to paint Captain America. Painted Iron Man, a Hulk. Yeah, she's gonna paint Iron Man. She's got that figure. We don't have a Hulk. I think. Oh, she has Spider Man too. Yeah, she's got Spider Man, and we don't have a Hulk, and we don't have the big giant head guy either. We don't have either of those. Oh, Captain America is more intimidating. Well, I mean, you can try this, because, hey, we did this a couple weeks ago. Get our metal shield there. Yeah, I know sometimes there's those figures that you sort of put off and put off. Remember we talked about just saving that white for those final those brightest highlights, and what better place for those than say on the helmet here if we're trying to indicate some metal there. And now I'm looking for that is what I want. I'm just looking at the picture there. That's what I needed. That's what I need right in here on these guys. And because we refrained from using the white earlier, just kind of instinctively reaching for it, well, now it has an impact now. Because as light as stuff like the maggot white and the maiden flesh looked at the time, now they don't look so light compared to this. I'm going to get caught up here in a second. What did you do? Did you play the game at all? Just painting the figs. Kathy, she played it at Gen Con. I mean, before it was ever actually, I believe, officially released, she was able to play some of it there. What we're hoping to do is we got the terrain we're going to paint, and we're hoping to be able to actually film basically battle reports on it. You know, the two of us playing it, that could be interesting. It's small enough, I think, to fit on the table that we have in mind. Sort of like Warcry, we were going to do some of that too. Look at this, we're taking a couple of bright dots there. We're going to do the same here. Again, we're taking that white and we're just giving an indication of a few spots there. Let's see, what you done with Black Panther? Gonna have to rewatch. Yeah, it's we're about an hour and a half in, so it's not too much to get caught up on. But yeah, you can always watch these again from the very beginning. I try to, yeah, we're hanging out, we're having some fun, but I do try to make them as much like a lesson as I can. See this last little bit here on the end? That's another important thing that gives you a little bit of nice light. Yeah, just like so. And miniatures conversion timers by Frankie. Well, greetings. Yeah, sorry that the what was it, the New Year's Eve stream. I couldn't quite keep doing it till it was actually New Year in Australia, much less Europe, because even then it was, I think it was after 5 o'clock in the morning. That was a late evening, that's for sure. So we're gonna do the same over here. We're gonna find a few lighter dots, and remember this stuff covers like crazy, even when it's been thinned down. Oh, Datalink says the game's a lot of fun. Most of the gamer tries to force himself to paint. Oh well, of course there's the age-old Blood Bowl saying that things do better when they're painted. Now, of course, with the way my dice went, they could have been plated in solid gold and it wouldn't have made a darn bit of difference. But see, for me, there's certain games now. If you're talking bolt action, I want it all. I want to be able to do all the painting of the figs. But that's a game that's kind of near and dear to me. So I really, well, I've done two, or is it three bolt action tournaments? I think it's two, and I've been able to actually do way better than I thought originally I was going to be able to do. I know I came tied for first in one, and I was actually playing on table two in my other bolt action tournament. Who knows, maybe at Historicon this summer I get to play in a tournament again for bolt action. So I'm going to do a couple of the same shimmery light spots here. Oh, hey Blacks, how's it going? It's been pretty wild this new year, that's for sure. It's crazy. It's only 4 days, not 4 days, more like 3.5 days in, and it seems like we've been doing an awful lot already. And man, there is so much planned, so many projects planned for this year. This year, well, we get back into 40K. Oh, there's a bunch of Primaris Marines here that are being prepped so that I can do basically chapter by chapter tutorials. I've got Sisters of Silence here. There's going to be the Rubik Marines and Araman. And the idea there is a couple of things. Remember, we were talking about that project where it's something you did in the past, and now you have a whole lot more knowledge, and you want to try those projects again, but this time armed with all of those nifty new things that you know. So that's what's going to be really fun about those. Well, the one I hadn't tried yet. I played Warhammer for 20 years. For us, we were not that far into it. I think it was 2007 when we started playing. So yeah, that was good grief. That must have been 6th edition or so. You've been playing since probably second or third. Now, Song of Icifer and that I had been playing that. It was interesting because at least at that point in its development, you could do crazy off the wall combinations of things and still really do some damage. Now we're doing some, I think you can see it here. Trying to get a little bit of reflected light onto his chest here. Gotta warm that up though. Gonna warm that up with some of my sepia liner here. And we've got a few of the, well, de facto muscles there that we've got to bring out. I am going to go into some of my basically greenish gray mix. Yeah, looking for some points there of lighter colors. So yeah, now we've got, so this really stands out from what we did in the interior here. And speaking of the interior, I'm actually going to work back a little bit in the opposite direction here. We're going to go darker there. Hopefully you can see that. Remember, we were doing some of the darker stipples to bring out that texture, because it wasn't really necessarily sculpted into the miniature. So that's where we come in. Essentially, we sculpt with paint. And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm going to do the same thing along the back of his arm here. What's fun about Crisis Protocol is the characters have ridiculous powers, but it's where everything is overpowered. Well, yeah, we've got Kathy prepped the light poles and stuff, and she said, "Oh, yeah, they toss these things around like they're playing a game of Pepper or something." I mean, it's like you're out there just playing a pickup game of football or something, and just chucking the old football around, except it's a street light or a car. Oh, that was the other thing I saw on that second Marvel Crisis Protocol page, that people had actually taken the cars and cut some chunks out of them and sort of had them smashed into concrete. Oh, yeah, now that could be an interesting piece of terrain. You take one of those cars and you have it sticking out of a building or something. I think the other, well, that again, history is my thing, so it's one reason why I love the bolt action, but the terrain for it was an interesting challenge because it's got to look realistic. You know, you can get away with fantasy terrain. You can sort of have some unusual buildings, to say the least. But with bolt action, the more strange a building looks, the less believable it is. Now we're doing the same thing with some darker tones here, right along this. Right along here, we're gonna do a little bit of our stippling there. And if you can see that reference, it's off to the, now it's off to the right of me. We'll make him bigger. So what we're trying to do is, I think you can see that on his shoulder there. Let's make this smaller again. Get him out of the way. We'll go back to our, this is basically a mix of a Achillean green, that's a contrast paint, and then some lighter colors like the faded ultramarine blue from Creature Caster, a little hint of the Maiden Flesh from Reaper Miniatures. And we're just now, all of that stuff that we did early on that looked so weird and wacky, well, now we can manipulate that. We've got over here, look at, we got greens, purples, reds, and nowhere, now we've messed with some white. We've played around with that a little bit, but yet there has not been, and nor will there be, any black used. It might look like there's black out on the palette, but there is not. There is no black paint was harmed in the filming of this video. So I'm going to look for some more underlighting there again. Trying to reflect some of these concrete colors here. What's interesting is actually at this point, the color that I'm putting on here is actually darker than the concrete, which is interesting. It's the way we would want it, right? Because reflected light, you sure as heck don't want that lighter than your highlights. I think that's the kind of little bugaboo that sometimes gets people when they're trying to do, say, the non-metallic stuff. It's the reflections that really get them. But basically the miniature tells you where those should go. I mean, it really does. If this, let's say there were red bricks here or whatever, well, we'd have to be working in somehow some of that red onto him, because that's just kind of how light and color work. They reflect off of each other. Now here, this is something we're going to go the opposite way. We're going to tone some of this down. We've got a little bit of a glaze there. And we just tone that down. That wasn't as bright as what was going on here. Still, to me, too close for comfort, so we just knocked that down. I can even do, let's say we want to paint some cracks or whatever here. There's some of that wildwood. Let's get a few cracks in the concrete here. I think one should probably come out of there. Hopefully, yeah, I think you can see that. I like to have it go to the other edge of the concrete instead of just kind of stopping. So that lends a little sense of scale there. Like I said, sometimes on these figures in particular, you gotta give them a little bit of help when it comes to finer details. I think you can see we're about to do paint another crack over here. Can't carry that all the way over to the other side here. Gonna grab something that's a little bit lighter. It's thinned down. And let's give this a little bit of shape here. Let's not go too crazy with this, but if we're gonna have these other deep cracks that are sculpted in, we are gonna paint in some cracks, well, we better give them some of the same sort of dimension here. It actually doesn't exist, it's all just flat. It's actually not sculpted in there, but we're making it seem as if it is. Where else are we doing that? Well, pretty much everywhere else with the whole stipple texture on them. Right, let's get a couple right there. I am also adding a happy little crack. That's interesting out of context. That's interesting enough even in context. When you hear some, I imagine somebody who just popped in here and they hear the happy little crack. And no, I don't happen to be turning him in a certain direction just because of that. Or am I? And the nice thing is, once you get enough of this texture here, and let's say you go over the top of it with some glazes, there's some of it will actually remain behind. I know some people, they've been doing well, speaking of comic books, they've been painting the comic book style on these guys that, like, it looks like a cell. I guess that's what they call it. So I'm going to go with some lighter touches there, and then we'll go a little bit darker again. Hey, Will's back. Right along here. Remember we're talking about some of the darker spots. I think we got that pretty well set. What's happening here? Something's gotta happen there. We're just taking that same purple color and mixing it with some of this lighter tan. Tons of different light colors here and mid-tones. None of which is black. But when you see the pictures of him, let's see. 3:30. I'll try and get the picture shot of him. He won't be up on Instagram for another day or two or so. But that's if you're wondering where I have pictures of painted fakes. Now there's also the blog too. There's that has its own set of tutorials and hundreds of them, maybe more, maybe more like thousands. I don't know. But the Patreon page, that's something that's flashing across the screen right now. That is something where I really get into my things like my army painting series, basically special episodes where I'm doing that. Oh, Will's got a question here. Oh, well, I think what you've seen me really emphasize here for sure, these guys, the Leviathan Blue and the Wildwood, because what are the two liner paints you see me using the most? Brown and blue. The Shyish Purple, that's another one because that's a lot like the red liner. The Achillean Green, that's really fun because that actually lets me make equivalents of mint green like this. So the whole point of those was just to find equivalents of other stuff so that people could themselves, if they can't get to the Reaper paints because it's too expensive to have them shipped out there or whatever, they could actually try and use the GW paints or those contrasts as equivalents. Now you've got I don't know how easy or difficult it is to get creature caster paints, say in Europe or Australia. Maybe easier in Europe than Australia. I mean, it's probably difficult to get anything there right now. I'm sure there's all kinds of shipping things that are completely disrupted. Heck, even if there wasn't fires, I would imagine that kind of heat buckles roads and really messes with asphalt. Now we're looking for some more darks here on the helmet. Boom, right there, and there, and there. Ah, the underside of this arm. Yeah, I gotta get something that's lighter there. We're just gonna take some of this, essentially almost like a concrete color, which makes sense. Oh yeah, sure will. Oh my gosh, yeah. There is I'm not quite. There's some folks that they try to get entire lines of paints, and I beg them not to, because you don't need those. You really just get the ones that you need, like those Optilung paints. That is not the whole line. I have a selection, basically colors that I anticipate that I would want to have for myself, that I think I am going to use. You try them out because there's some contrast paints that I hadn't got in my original batch of, what was it, 11, that I find that I use those actually more, the new ones, than the original 11. Snakebite leather. That is the equivalent for this right here, the sepia liner. So I'd use some. There's your sepia liner. And sitting right over there, that's the snakebite leather. But especially, well, obviously going to use those in things like golds and maybe even a little bit of, say, bronze, because it's got a bit of a greenish look to it. Yeah, geez, look at that. Looks so light on him, and now look at how much lighter I just made it with a little bit of maiden flesh there. So remember, it may look very light here, but it's actually, when it comes down to it, is not that light. So you're actually putting some of the snakebite leather slash sepia liner stippling there. I am going to snag me a little bit of something to drink here. Just 1 second. we've got the blue that's here, but I'm going to actually now put maybe a more intense round of the sepia liner here. Heck, it's almost a little bit of stippling that's going on there. It's not as tight as, say, the stippling that we've got on Black Panther himself. But you can see, look at how it's a little more on the yellow side over here, but then over on this side, we get some more of the blue. Oh, from Scotland, so shipping that bad. Yeah, I'm glad it's not too much of a hassle to get them there. I know that Peter was telling me they have a distributor over there. They have someone that can actually, it's not just them shipping individual boxes to people all the way from Canada. They actually have someone there on the ground, or several someones, taking care of that. Oh, what the heck. I will go another step lighter here. And a little more of the I keep saying snakebite leather, but sepia liner. They're kind of almost interchangeable in many ways. That's kind of the cool thing. And I think I've basically gotten to speak both of those languages so much, both Reaper, clear and liners, and contrast paints, that I'm sort of constantly speaking both languages now at the same time. So they're just trying to find some reflected light and some additional texture. What do we got here? We've got some of that Leviathan blue. That's a touch of the flesh tear red. That's the purple that I've been making, but it's just I'm quite literally too lazy to reach over and try and grab some shyish purple that's maybe a foot and a half to my right. I finally now have to start thinking about some of these darkest, some nice, real, hefty darks in here. We've been working mid-tones, we've been working lights. One of my last little things I'm going to start to mess around with here will be these darks. Now, do I want to get some more on that helmet? And by the way, the Army Painter Anti-Shine that I'm referring to is this right here. What's nice is you brush that on. You can put a ton of coats, let's say up here, the areas where it's just going to hit your fingers or be contacted a lot. See, we're going to emphasize the darks right next to where we put those lightest highlights. Here, let's get a little bit of dark shadow underneath the cheek there. And this is basically a dark purple that we're using. And we're going to do some darker stipples here on the arms. Let's get some here too. We don't have... we went lighter, 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 but now we're going to go darker right there. Let's see how this line, it's not universally the same level of lightness. We actually let that get darker, and then we bring it back again. It's an important thing when you are doing any kind of freehand pattern, or even something like this. If it's just too solid of a line, well, then you kind of get that horrible blacklining effect where all you did was it's just an outline. You don't want an outline, you want something with shape to it. And obviously here I could spend, oh geez, I mean you could spend hours more trying to refine every last little tiny thing on this. What I do, I try to just paint the thing like this, or in whatever the video is that I've filmed, and then just take the pictures of at as it was finished in the video instead of several extra minutes or whatever or hours of painting after the video was done. Because I mean, what good is that? You don't really get to see, okay, how much was done in the actual paint session. Now here we're going to go darker again. See see how there's sort of a green there, and then it gets to that sort of tannish color. Trying to reflect some of the street color there. We got purple going right now. If it were up to me, and I get this question an awful lot, they say, Jim, what's your favorite paint? What would you use all the time? My first response would actually be oils. I really, really love working with oils. It's very relaxing and mellow because I can work on tons and tons of stuff, but be able to do wet into wet things, not have to worry about paint drying on the miniature, on the palette, or anything like that. Yeah, this is that, speaking of Creature Caster slash Slow Fuse Monument, the paint of 1,000 names, as I like to call it. We're just utilizing that bold titanium white. I see some of those needed to get hit. You know what, maybe I've got to figure out something to do here. Let's get that Achillean green. This again is another one of those contrast paints. I need a little more shape in though. They're just basically two little jagged white lines that are sticking out there, and I don't really like that. That's not thrilling. Let's see what I can do right up here on his shoulder. Couple of more dots right there. Basically trying to get as close as I can to that necklace that he's wearing. I think I need some more defined stippling here on his back. Well, there's a whole kaleidoscope of colors, and I'm really starting to see it now when I look at that. Now it's got a touch of your Leviathan blue is working its way into there. And for those of you coming in just now, if you go back a little bit further, you can see we took that reference picture that's on the right. We've made that a lot bigger. And I've been trying to mostly work from that. We've obviously got, the one that's down on the bottom there. I might try to go. I'm looking at that and seeing that I can get maybe some darks into the helmet here. Yeah. There. Oh yeah, that's good. Here, let's emphasize those a little more here. But not so much that I lose. Trying to keep that light there, but yeah, this is good having this dramatic. And that's almost, I'm gonna go almost like a shadow that's gonna come down there. That's the other thing too, is when you're, well, it can happen with object source lighting, and I think we did that on this guy here on Hellboy. Yes, we have the object source lighting, but we're trying to think, where does it cast a shadow? Because, yeah, if you're going to have object source lighting, if you're lighting something, you're probably going to cast a shadow with it. All right, these guys here need their reflected light. Let's see if we can't do that on this side of the metal there and on that side. I'm going to maybe grab a smidge of the faded ultramarine there. And well, we just hit the 2-hour mark. Just hit the 2-hour mark, and obviously we've been talking about more than just this miniature. We've been talking about different paint lines. How much is it worth to invest in multiple paint lines? And, well, do you ever try and indulge in an entire paint line? For me, that is something that I just would never ever do. Now, there are times just doing what I do, I am sometimes sent things like a paint set or whatever, a whole line of paints, and I try to test all of them to see what kind of uses I can find. But it's tough to say, yeah, you need that entire range. Because the Reaper paints, what do I use the most? Maybe 11 colors, maybe 12, 13 if you include, because now there's some new clear paints. Still, there's hundreds of different Reaper paints. And I am not using those hundreds. I'm not even using 2 dozen. I would never, ever, ever need, I would much rather have a whole bunch of the ones that I use. And we all end up, I suppose, getting those favorite colors. Your palette, now for me, my palette's changed a lot because of the genres that I've had to do. Once I started doing the Wild West Exodus, the Bolt Action, those type of figures, that changed my palette dramatically. And I mean very, very dramatically. Because the stuff I was doing on Space Marines at the time, well, that wasn't going to be the thing for the Wild West Exodus stuff, and then the Bolt Action, where most everything is just various forms of green and brown. There's not a lot of brown Space Marines, which is why it's going to be real interesting getting back into those guys now. Not just doing those in acrylics, but yeah, I'm looking forward to oil painting the Space Marines too. And my sisters. So once again, just gonna keep emphasizing these little hidden bits of, so they get even more fine. And then I will go back into my basically purple there. Oh, let's get this a little, few of those darker stipples. Remember I was talking about doing the darker ones? Let's get a few of those into here. And just a couple. It does like what we did here, where we simulated more texture with just a couple of dots. And then here, see on his leg, so it's not just brighter over there, but it's got that cooler color to it. Speaking of cooler colors, we are going to grab some Leviathan blue here. It's time to go with some more darks again. And that's going to be on the inside. Then let's get down onto his Shin here, same. I want to try working a few. Yep, darker dots here, right there on his shoulder. Oh, let's get this going on around his collar. That's a little bit of a weird sculpting thing going on there, so I'm trying to navigate that somehow. Now I think, see, I've got these. This is another case where those are really clearly defined. I'm going back into here. This is the maiden flesh. And we're going to, yeah, I'm just going to solidify that particular line and this one here. We can't have those on his legs that are so much closer to the ground. And look at this. This is still just a middle tone. This tells me that I still have some decent darks working here. For that to look that light in comparison, that means I haven't lost my darks yet. But I'm also, look at that. Let's throw a few little hints of stippling in the shadows, believe it or not. I think this is by far the most stipple texture whatever that I've ever done on any figure in 20 years. And the last thing I would have expected it to be on would be a superhero. I would have thought for sure it would have been a cloak or a cape or something. Something that's not a basically superhero. So you never know. You just never know how things are going to go. Yeah, so I'm after here. You see that reference that's down in the lower left-hand corner. That's the kind of stuff I'm after. Okay, what do we got? Yeah, maybe I'm going to knock down the highlight on the nose ever so slightly there. I can start to make all these little adjustments, little corrections here. And then something like this, where it is a superhero, a comic book type thing, well, you got the people that are doing the comic book illustration style stuff. So here, maybe I take some of this reflected light a little bit further than I normally would. So again, you got the cooler colors here. When it swings around here, then you've got those warmer tones. Mess around with my green again. There we go. And boy, that looks so dark, but boy, when it gets down here, it's going to be so much lighter. So much lighter. Because there's been times looking at this where I say, oh my gosh, I have nothing but middle tones on here and some highlights. And then I put a color like this down and go, oh my gosh, there's a lot of solid darks on here. Nice, nice hefty darks. All right. Yeah, there's just so many. Gosh, this is a good practice for doing P dot camo or oak leaf. So I guess I'm ready for my bolt action stuff again. Who would have thought? Working on superheroes would be great practice for that type of camo. I'm gonna get just a little splash of my Achillean green back out. That's all I need. Just a little bit. And we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna mix it with our lighter color. It becomes semi-translucent. That's better. That's much better. Now that's going to set those warmer colors on that side down pretty well. I'm going to try and see, I don't necessarily want it to be lighter. I'm looking for the intensity of it. The intensity of that Kilian green next to some other more subdued colors. And the nifty thing about this semi-translucent mix is that when I put it over some of my stipple patterns here, it's not going to blot those out. It's just going to influence them one way or another. It's not even necessarily to darken those. It's just to shift them from one color. It's tinting. Think of the Badger ghost tints. They're not meant to shade things or glaze things. Tint is in the name for a reason. And that's what's happening here is we're tinting some of this stuff on his back more towards that bluish color. Here on this leg here, we'll do a similar thing. We're gonna it walks back a little of the texture, but now also tints it white because look, we got that blue right there on that base, so we want to keep that going. Want to keep that going. And like I said, some of this blue here that's in the base, a couple reasons for it. First, maybe it's almost a bit of moonlight or whatever, nighttime. But then there's that notion of a color goes somewhere, it must go everywhere. That is the first chapter in the book of Wappel. Yes, indeed. Chapter 1, verse 1. And I got this white here, that's that bold titanium white. This is the thing that can make that helmet look more metallic versus just more like the shine that we've put, say, on his suit. We'll work on his, yeah, let's bring up the toe slightly there. But I'm trying to keep this, hold straight up. See that over here, this side's got more of the blue. This side has more of that sepia liner. We're trying to keep that consistent there. Get a few more stipples. This is that Achillean green mix. There's just areas that I keep wanting to do stuff on the face, and I realize, no, I really should just leave that be. Yeah, that's again, trying to get that light coming down onto him. We'll do some more with our... Now, and as we've been talking about this whole time, that pro-acryl white, that's going to be very opaque, so all of a sudden my sepia liner is going to lose that natural transparency. I have to realize that's, okay, is that what I'm after? And if it is, okay. But yeah, you don't want to be, you want the unpleasant surprise of thinking you're going to still be able to do all that transparent stuff, but, well, now you just added the opaque stuff to it. They were even carrying some of the stippling down onto the concrete here. There's a little texture on the concrete of these bases, but yeah, it's not a lot. You have to kind of build it up yourself. Boost that a little bit. Now I got some purple here. And we're going to throw in some few darks here. Even on his boots. Almost as if he's maybe sort of casting a shadow here, slightly. And I think it was, oh yeah, it was the Captain America here. I'll bring him out. So there he is. So see how we painted that shadow in there? Because the idea is that he was lit from above, and it basically cast his own shadow there. That's a little bit what we're going to do here. We'll essentially create a little bit of a shadow for him. It then starts to explain why there's that pretty intense lighting on something that is black. If all of a sudden you say, oh, well, yeah, okay, look at all this shadow that's here. So see how we connected that to his boot over there. And we've got some shadow here. It's only natural because it's hard to reach that around him anyways. Now, this is another reason. There's several reasons why I paint the figures on the bases. Now, I didn't used to do that. I used to always paint them stuck onto a dowel rod like we've got here. This will be an interesting little, yeah, getting back into the Space Marines again, going the way of chaos. Now, this, I'm going to do just some, these are going to be more straight up glazes here. I needed to just darken that. And then, see, I'm kind of giving him a shadow right there. Any other, yeah, I'll emphasize the shadow a bit more here. And you can see we're using that same sort of purple type color there. And I think that gives us a fairly decent look at our Black Panther. We're going to make his picture bigger once again. Now, of course, it's difficult when when you're trying to compare the standing pose to this. We've also got the crouching pose and the lower left-hand corner there. I'm going to throw in again some little more darks there. Like I say, I can adjust this as much as I want. I say, you know what, that's just too much light. Let's tone it down. And it's very much that dry glaze that we talked about. And I'm just, for right now, I'm going to just call this, put some of that here with the Army Painter Anti-Shine on here. And let's do that real quick. Now, for sure, the one thing you definitely want is a clean brush. You don't want anything on there whatsoever. And let's get some of our Anti-Shine here. And you notice see how it's all clear? And you notice I didn't put a whole bunch out there either. You don't need a bunch. You actually want to use a minimal amount. And it's more like you're pushing it across the surface. You're certainly not slapping it on there. Found out the hard way, you don't want to do that. You most definitely don't want to do that. But what it also does is it brings back, your darker colors actually get darker. There's a little bit of enhancement that goes on. I mean, the side benefit is, well, hey, it protects the paint too. That's never a bad thing. But it actually acts almost like a varnish on an oil painting. I just want to thank everybody that joined in the chat here, and just want to a shout out to all of my friends there in Australia, because that's getting to be a just a whole nationwide sort of a thing, and it's going to have all kinds of effects, whether or not the fires are by your house. Obviously, smoke, air quality, disruptions, and flights, all those kind of things. And I'm just wishing you guys the best here. Just, and I know there's not much I can do about the weather, but hopefully maybe. Oh, thank you. You're welcome there. You're welcome, Data Link. So we will let this dry now, and yeah, I can already see some of my darker colors sort of standing out a little bit more than they did before I hit it with this. Yeah, there we go. And you can see I can do a little bit more in these areas where I think I'm going to be touching it more. Like on top of his head, I could put 5, 6, 7 coats there if I wanted to. Now they're very thin, but multiple coats nonetheless. Okay, so thanks again, everybody. It's appreciated. And I'll catch you on the next one in just a couple of days. Oh, Evil Elvis, sorry to say hi and bye, because we're just finishing this up. But, well, you can go back. You can go back in time like a time lord in a couple hours, and see how all this got started here. Oh, and thanks, Fruity Toots and Trevor. Much appreciated. Yeah, there we go. Well, I appreciate everybody, and well, Happy New Year and all that sort of stuff. Catch you in a couple of days.